Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whenever it is you're watching this video. Grüezi miteinander, salut à tout le monde, buenas a todos. What other languages do I know? Ciao tutti, hey hey, in my fiance's Swedish. Hope you're doing well. My name is Marcos Cabanas. I'm really excited to show you this little video that I'm prepping here right now. If you've clicked on it, it's probably because you like nerding out to music production, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing here today. Something I've never done before, but I kind of want to show you around the entire production process of Racing with Rosie, my latest single. To give you a little bit of backstory about the song, this all started out in June of 2024. I drove up to Amsterdam with my fiance, girlfriend at the time, to meet up with a couple friends. This is Ozzie Melendez. He's an amazing trombone player. I say this a lot, but if you haven't seen his stuff or heard his stuff, please check it out. He's played with Springsteen, Billy Joel, Mark Anthony. During this dinner, we got to talking, and we said that it would be really cool if, one day we worked together, we recorded some stuff together. But that kind of stayed out in the ether, and nothing really came of it. There's a reason why I'm telling you all this. You'll understand in a second. Fast forward to the day after, and I went to a Springsteen show with 3 other friends of mine. During the encore of the show, there's a couple tunes which Springsteen doesn't really play live, but that we all love to hear. One of those songs is Racing the Street from his 1978 album, Darkness on the Edge of Town. There it is. Then there's another song called Rosalita. I don't have that one in... Oh, I do have it in vinyl, actually. Okay. Rosalita, come out tonight. Tends to be shortened to Rosie, and she just started screaming out these song titles, Racing the Street, Rosalita, Racing, Rosie, Racing with Rosie, and I had a light bulb moment go off in my head, and Racing with Rosie came to be. So I drove home that night, I got home, pulled out my song notebook, and I wrote Racing with Rosie. It's actually one of the songs that has been written the fastest in all of my songwriting career. Anyway, that's the backstory to Racing with Rosie. Now that you know the context, I'm gonna give you a little bit of insight into the actual production. Racing with Rosie has been a terribly hard song to record, but because of this, it has allowed me to work with certain people that I normally wouldn't work with. One of those big people is Juani Capella. I contacted him because while I was trying to mix Rosie, I just couldn't get it down. We ended up doing this really strange thing where I would mix the song how I would like it, and then I would send it to him for him to polish up that mix, and then he'd send it back to me, and then I'd do the final polishing. So it's been a really complicated back and forth process, literally between both hemispheres of the world. But it's been interesting nonetheless, and I'm really happy with the result and how it's turned out. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to show you the unpolished production process and walk you through the different steps of how we recorded the song. All right, so this is the Logic project for Racing with Rosie. There are 94 tracks. I know it says 141 over here, but that's because we have a bunch of hidden tracks. What I like to do is I record the stuff and then I duplicate each stem such that I have the raw recording and then one that I can process. So I'm going to start walking you through the very first bits that I recorded. The acoustic guitar and the vocals. It sounded something like this.
I got a call on Sunday afternoon about a girl who wanted to ride in early June. She needed my car to take it out for a drive.
So there's only one acoustic guitar playing on the left.
She smelled like summer and had a tinge of dirty margaritas woven to her fringe. She said she needed a reason to feel alive.
And then later on, when the chorus hits, we have a second acoustic guitar comes in on the right.
Going racing with Rosie in the early hours of July.
The original idea for the song was just to have kind of a chugging train. You can really feel it when I recorded the acoustic guitar because it's not a straight 4 on the floor kind of thing. It's really that chicka 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 chicka, and you can feel it purely with the acoustics. That's pretty much it for the acoustics. They have very minimal processing on them, actually. They just have a little EQ to bump up the low and the mid because I wanted a little bit of a fuller body on the guitar. Then, of course, a compressor on them. Just very, very light 2-to-1 ratio. And then one final channel EQ just to boost up a little bit around the 6,000 hertz. That's pretty much it for the acoustic guitars. After that, I had recorded a MIDI sample of drums with a really cool plugin that I have called Addictive Drums. It just allows me to get my drumming ideas down very, very easily. However, my amazingly talented friend Mateo Eraña gives me a call one day and he's like, who is recording your drums? Would you like me to do the drums for the song? And I was like, well, right now I only have MIDI drums, so if you're down to record some drums, it'd be really cool. Problem is that I can get around mixing, but I can't really get around mixing drums. It's never been my forte. And so what we ended up doing was combining Mateo's drums with some of those MIDI triggers that we have. So I actually triggerized his drum set to the MIDI samples that I had, and we came out with this really cool combination where you kind of have one very quantized drum beat, which is the MIDI drums, and then the more human feel of the drums that are Mateo's, and that gives you something like this. So you can kind of hear it, especially on the hi-hat, that there is a little bit of push and pull, which gives it that human feel, and it almost sounds as if there are two drum sets playing together, which I think is really cool, and how had I never thought of that before? What Mateo did was he took that train beat that I had and he converted it into a straight beat, but I got lazy and I didn't really want to record the acoustic guitars, so I kind of kept those chugging train acoustic guitars with Mateo's 4 on the floor drum beat. We did use a couple of different triggers, and we tried a couple different snares. The snare was a particular problem. So we actually combined, in this case, for the intro, the snare that we had on the triggers was a Gresh bell brass. And then we really wanted to get a dry sound, kind of similar to James Bay and to the Zach Bryan records that I was listening to at the time. But we also wanted to bring a little bit of a Max Weinberg feel. And we know that Max Weinberg plays supraphonic snares. So that second part where kind of the 4 on the floor comes in, we combine the Gresh bell brass to a supraphonic, and that just gives us something really, really cool. When you hear the snare on its own, it sounds kind of dead and flat, but as soon as you combine it with the entirety of the drums, it does sound pretty good. This is kind of basically from microphone leakage from the overheads and from the hi-hat, and it gives it that dry vibe that I was looking for at the time. So with Mateo's drums, when he sent them to me, it was a very raw take. It was recorded actually in multiple parts just because the idea that I had was unplayable. So we had to play around with recording first the actual drum set itself and then adding on top of that what we wanted to emphasize. But those drums actually have very minimal processing as well, just a very slight compressor and a very little bit of reverb. And they sound something like this on their own. And then you combine that with the triggered bass drum and snare drum. And for the ending, this is what I meant by the entire song was unplayable on a single drum set. I really wanted this hi-hat roll at the end. So what Mateo did was he played it on his own once, and then we added this hi-hat roll and combined them, and you get this. With the triggered bass drum and snare drum, you get this. So I think that sounds really great. If we forward a little bit, I recorded a piano. I didn't really want that classic piano sound that I had recorded on my previous album, Antebellum. So I went for a more, not saloon, but kind of those tacky, odd pianos up against the wall, ever so slightly out of tune. I think it adds to that character of we don't want a full production like wall of sound kind of thing, and it has this really sweet mellow sound that I really like. So you can really hear the hammers of the piano hitting the strings as opposed to a grand piano that might be a little bit more full in body. What I realized was that we had this push from the drums with the 4 on the floor, and then the pull from the guitars with this chugging train kind of pattern, but it was getting lost. So I decided that the piano would follow that. So what I did was I just recorded a tambourine that again was following that train pattern, and record the piano based on that. And I think it contrasts really, really well with the drums. Next step was to lay down my electric guitars. Now, I always have my amazing, amazing guitar player. He's been playing with me for over 10 years now, 10, 12 years, Raph Dias. We've been in several bands together, and actually he was the lead guitar player in my very, very first band and my very, very first time in a studio. I always call upon him to help me out, lay some guitars, but in order to do that, I gotta lay down some electric guitars first. I use a very standard Telecaster, nothing fancy, just very straight out of the box, no mods. And I run it through a Kemper player with no external pedals. So everything is really just the guitar and the Kemper itself. I add a little bit of an overdrive and I put it on the bridge pickup just to give it that twangy Telecaster sound. I always record 2 guitars and I pan them wide to really get that feel of you're in a room with the music playing. Because if you record just 1 guitar and you leave it in mono, it doesn't feel as full as those 2 guitars together. So I added those and we basically had a functional track. So it sounds something like this.
She grew up me, playing her guitar through the barroom scene. When rough times came to visit and made us roll.
It sounds good, but it still sounds kind of empty. So what Raph did was, instead of re-recording the rhythm electric guitars that I had, he added little licks here and there that I think it just adds so much character to the song. I cranked up the overdrive and then I duplicated the track and I ever so slightly panned them. The reason for this is that on one of them I really boosted the mid to upper end, and on the other one I boosted that lower end, and that gives a contrast between the left and the right channels. And then we fill it up with a couple other licks here and there, mainly bends and some picking patterns. I don't know if you could tell, it's kind of panning from ear to ear. I added the step effects on basically a rotating wave that follows the beat of the song. It just switches basically from the left channel to the right channel, and then it starts the cycle over again. So you kind of have like this guitar that's turning around you. Anyway, I still wanted to add a little bit more character, and I really like to play with samples from time to time. And there's this phrase that I have in the song.
And as the sun set into dark, we revved the engine till it sparked.
We revved the engine till it sparked. And I felt that that was like the perfect place to add some sort of sample of an engine revving. I used some automation to pan the revving of the sample from one ear to the other. You end up getting something that is barely discernible in the track of the song, but when you know it's there and you hear it out, it's a really cool gimmick.
And as the sun set into dark, we revved the engine till it sparked.
Honestly, I don't know if anybody felt it, heard it in any way whatsoever, but I thought it was really cool. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and we're in the mixing process, and I sent it to my brother Emilio, and he says, something is still missing from the song. What's missing? Well, something like horns could really work out, or a saxophone or something. Spark moment. Since I had spoken to Ozzie about working with him, I shot him a message, and I thought it'd be really, really cool to have Ozzie lay down some trombone. Ozzie ended up contacting Garry, who's an amazing trumpet player as well. Also plays with Springsteen. I wrote down a horn part with my brother. This is a little known fact about me, but I actually studied saxophone for 10 years, and then I ended up recording a baritone and a tenor saxophone for the song. And so we have Ozzie playing the trombone, Garry playing the trumpet. Out of the box, they sounded amazing, but when something sounds amazing out of the box, you get a little bit confused because you're like, it shouldn't sound this good with no processing whatsoever. And I think for my own peace of mind, I added a little bit of tape delay and reverb, and then just a couple compressors, but there's really not that much. As you can see over here, I even played with an equalizer for Garry's trumpets, but in the end it wasn't even necessary to keep it on there. So this is what the horns sound like on their own. And then just to see what the tape delay sounds like, it's something like this. But it just adds a little bit of character. I use the standard plugins from Logic, but then I have this additional plugin called Tape Cassette 2, which kind of saturates the sound a little bit and gives it a little bit of flutter, kind of as if it were passing through a tape. So you can kind of hear Garry's trumpet breaking apart a little bit, but it's very buried in the sound. I mean, most of the work was entirely done by them, and I'm amazed at how well it sounded straight out of the box. Ozzie recorded 2 trombones that I panned left and right, and again, even if they're playing the same thing, it's kind of like what I explained with the electric guitars earlier. It just gives it that openness, stereo sound, as if you're in the room with the musicians. For the trumpets, since they're a little bit more present, Garry recorded 4 trumpets, so 2 for the left and 2 for the right, with ever so slight variations between them. Of course, when you combine all of that, you get this almost explosive ending, which I love. So those are the horns. That is kind of the focal point of the song, I would say. I combined everything, sent it to Raph, and he said that there was still something missing. And so what he did was a little ping pong of guitars, left, right, and 1 octave higher. And he played around with what the horns had recorded to really get this ping pong sound of ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da. Anyway, so that's pretty much the entire song. While we're mixing, I got a call or a text message, I can't remember, from my friend Jake, who says, I'm about to release a song. Have a listen to it. Let me know what you think. And he recorded this amazing song called Carpool Lane, which featured this explosion of pads and Moog synthesizers. And when I heard it, I was like, I have to get some of this and add it to my song. And this is really when the song started to shift, because it takes away that 70s dry character and incorporates these 80s elements. So I added 4 different pads. If you want to know exactly what I used, was the Retro Synth plugin from Logic. I slightly panned them left and right, but this time it's not like the guitars or the horns that are playing the same thing. This time they're really playing different things. On the right channel, you have a little bit of a bouncing, damped oscillator. And on the left channel, an arpeggiated pad. And I also have this kind of oriental pad. I didn't really know what to call it. I just felt like it gave a little bit of old school oriental vibes. It's basically very low, but it adds harmonics on top of that, and it kind of sustains the bass while adding a little bit of a top end. When the song breaks, I felt like the padded LFO wasn't enough. I took the exact same setup, but I got rid of the channel EQ and I opened it up. So you go from something damped to something that breaks into your ears. And that added that extra touch that I was really looking for. If we forward a little bit again in the production process, I had recorded a bass, nothing very complex at all. I'm not a bass player myself. I was feeling that it wasn't sustaining the song well enough. I mean, when you think of bass players, for me, the 2 that stand out are Lee Sklar and Garry Tallent. These are the 2 biggest names in the bass playing world. And so for me to have Garry play on my song is really an absolute dream come true. And this is really where the song steps up to a higher level, because you can hear that contrast from what I played to somebody that really knows what they're doing. I killed off some frequencies with this channel EQ, and I could hear a little bit of humming from the pickup, and so I just added a very slight noise gate on top of that. What Garry sent me was a DI signal, which is amazing because I can then play around with exactly the sound that I wanted. I ran it through a very simple bass amp in Logic. It's not even a bass amp, it's actually a DI as well, but it just gives it that roundness that a straight DI signal is missing. And then I ran it through a compressor, very, very light compression ratios, and no makeup at all, or 1 dB of makeup, but apart from that, really no processing at all to what Garry had done. And with that, we're basically done with the song. The last things that come in are Maria's vocals. Now, Maria was instrumental in this song. She played a key role in getting the song to what I really wanted it to sound like. The song was recorded in F, and the idea for the song was for it to be a very simple, almost country style beat. But when Mateo did his thing with the drums and converted it into basically a soul rock track, I realized that my voice was getting buried. And that's because everything in general is too powerful. And so my voice kind of gets buried in there. Now, we had already recorded the bass, we had already recorded the drums, we had already recorded guitars, the horns, basically recorded the entire track. And I didn't want to tell everybody, guys, we're going to bring this up one entire step to G or maybe A flat. So I asked Maria to really do whatever she could to make the vocal stand out. Maria always sends me a ton of takes. And then what I do is when I mix them, I take parts of one take, parts of another take. I kind of combine them. And what's really cool is that out of Maria, you can get an entire choir of people singing. So if we listen to Maria on her own, on one of the takes, I just added a phone notch filter. Ozzie told me, last year that I played around with phone notch filters too much, but he didn't mean it as a bad thing or anything. He just said it was a curiosity out of my music, and I think it's something that I really like to use, and that it sounds really good on some of the things. So actually, Antebellum is full of phone notch filters. Priest from Terre Haute is also full of phone notch filters. So of course we had to use the phone notch filter here in Racing with Rosie. So this is the phone notch filter on Maria. Like summer, dirty margaritas woven through her fringe. But it's only on one channel, and it's at the very, very start.
Like summer and had a tinge of dirty margaritas woven to her fringe.
When the song breaks, I limit that phone notch filter, and I just open up her entire voice to get something like this.
We rev the engine till it sparked. Why do we feel so small?
I pan her vocals left and right just to get that choir effect.
Fast enough to keep us both from laughing when we crash and dive. Racing with the winds.
The very last thing of production was adding this glockenspiel combo. So how do I normally structure it is I pan a glockenspiel left and right at different octaves, and then I add this piano effect called muted clank keys. Now, this is a standard setup that you can find in the sampler plugin. It gives it an eerie kind of vibe, but when combined with a glockenspiel, I think it sounds really, really good. You can hear the effect of the eeriness of the muted clank keys on here. Kind of like a reverse sound. And the glockenspiel on its own . So when you combine that glockenspiel combo with Raph's twangy guitar, you get something really, really cool. Kind of like childhood memories of like being in a carousel or stuff like that. That's really what it sounds like to me. And with that, Racing with Rosie was pretty much set. So what I want to do is play you the song without any vocals whatsoever, just so that you can really hear what the instrumentation of the song sounds like, because I think that it is a fundamental part of the song as much as the lyrics themselves. But when you sing lyrics on top of it, you tend to focus on the lyrics rather than the instrumentation. So I really wanted to show you what the entire track without my voice sounds like. So here it is. This is the karaoke version of Racing with Rosie.